Hey, good morning, everybody. Pastor Zach here. Thanks so much for spending some time with me today as we gather together, as we seek to live and to build community. Um, so it's been a week, hasn't it? I've got an amazing colleague who continually reminds me and so many around her that, we are called to feel our feelings. And in the midst of all that is going on, um, that more than anything, I think, can bring us together. It is something that we can understand um, the difficulty, we can understand the grief, we can understand the anger, we can understand the fear, and we can feel all of those things all at once. And then the question becomes, where do we go from it? Where do we engage the world? How do we live in community? How do we understand differences? How do we live into those differences? And I think part of that is recognizing those painful feelings, those difficult moments, the journeys, the anxiety, all of it, putting a name to it, because you can't deal with something until you name it. You can't own something until you recognize it. And I think that's all part of this. It's easy to blame, it's easy to shift, it's easy to say, well, it's their fault, it's easy to throw it on somebody else. And we can do that with our feelings too. We can say, well, they made me feel this way. Sorry, that was your reaction. And the question becomes, how do we then understand our reactions? How do we understand our feelings? How do we allow ourselves to feel them and talk about them, to find a safe space to be able to talk about it? And yet to be able to work through some of that. Often, people say that, and I've heard, seen memes and whatever, that, going to a therapist should be the same as going to a doctor. There should be no stigma to it. And for some reason there is. And yet, we've found ways through centuries before of talking about feelings, and yet suppressing a lot of those feelings. And that turns to anger and frustration, and it comes out in some ways violently. And so where do we go? What does it mean for us as community, as people with differing views, as people who struggle with different sides of things? And part of that is our different lived experience, because I have not lived your life, you have not lived my life. And yet, here we are, connected. Maybe loosely, maybe someone has shared this with you, and so you don't know me, or you have only talked briefly with me, or whatever it becomes. Maybe it's someone who I've known for years. And yet we have an opportunity to build relationship, to go beyond what is expected, to reach out understandings, to sit down and to find places where we do connect, where we do agree, and where we disagree, where we can do so respectfully, where we can own all of that. I find it humbling so often that people will come and share their grief, their pain, their sadness, and their anger even with me. And I think part of that is, I hope many people believe that I'm a safe person to talk to, that often that it will stay with me, and that maybe they know that I can hopefully challenge them to do something, to act, to find an opportunity to live into some of those feelings and into that hope and into that engagement of connecting forward. We together can impact the world. We talk about this promise, this faith that so many of us share that we're are struggling with, and it comes down to, how do we serve? I was struck this past week that we talk about vengeance, and many will try to put it in a biblical perspective, and yet when I think about that, here would be my response is, yes, we see this vengeful God in the Old Testament, and yet in the New Testament we have a God, a parent, whose son is crucified, who does not exact vengeance, whose son offers forgiveness on the cross. That struck me deeply. That a God who we believe would be justified in vengeance didn't. I was reading over a post and one of my friends shared from Reverend Benjamin Creamer, and it says, the second part, it says, Jesus keeps calling us Christians to take up our crosses and be like him, serving the world through grace, humility, compassion, and self-sacrificial love. We're invited and called to that. And so often I think there are groups that, want to turn all of that upside down and blame, or, try to use Christianity as a prop to rile people up, to get this notion of, power. And yet the power that Christ held was not power. It was grace. It was understanding. It was love. That's what Christ held. That's what Christ offered and still offers. And yes, that means we speak up for those who are struggling. Yes, it means that we seek out nonviolent responses. Yes, it means that we seek out opportunities to see other people. To do the work that God has for us. To do it humbly. That it doesn't come from us. That it comes from a creator who created so much, who created everything, and yet says, you're important. How humbling is that? And so I encourage you to feel your feelings, to talk with someone about those feelings. And if you can't find anybody to talk through and with those feelings, reach out. I will gladly be here to listen. We can grab a cup of coffee or tea or whatever. We can go for a walk. We can just sit. We can be in silence as you feel your feelings. But know that you are not in this alone. We are not in this alone. That we can be grounded and uplifted and strengthened by a God who calls us near, by a God who invites us, by a God who engages us, by a God who walks with us humbly, by a God who loves us so that we can love others. I want to thank you all for spending a few minutes with me today. I cherish your comments, your questions, even your smart remarks, so please feel free to leave those. Please feel free to share this if it impacts you today, or if you might know someone who it might impact. And I invite you to connect with us, worship with us, find all sorts of our ministries and our activities and our ways we serve God's mission here in this place and beyond, and engage with us. And if you are from out of the area, let me know, and we can find ways to plug you in wherever you are. I want to thank you for spending your time with me today. It means a lot. And I encourage you and I support you. And I'll say it. No matter where you are, we love you. Take care, everybody. Have a great day. God bless. We'll talk soon.